right, so I'll call to order the July 29th, 2024 meeting of the Board of Equalization. We'll start with a roll call for the board members present in person.
Len Mayo, Jack Jewett.
Evan Mayo, Scottsville.
David Mitchell, Whitehall.
David Norford, Ravenna.
And we also have one of our members, Mr. Beard, who's attending today by Zoom. Will you please identify yourself, Mr. Beard, as being present by Zoom?
Yeah, Bob Beard, Samuel Miller, present from Old Town, Alexandria, Virginia, via Zoom. And thank you all for allowing me the opportunity to do this.
Mr. Mayor or Mr. Mitchell, we just need to note that in the.
I guess you should note also that Mr. Beard did contact me and Mr. Lynch before the meeting and requested approval, and I approved it, which was within my authority as the board chair under our bylaws. Okay, could we have a roll call, please, for any members of the assessor's staff that are going to give testimony today?
Peter Lynch, County Assessor.
James Shelley, Senior Appraiser, Markham.
Billy Taylor, Deputy Assessor.
Okay, did you do that twice? Okay, I thought maybe I didn't hear you. All right, and then will the applicant please identify himself?
Dominic Consign from 1785 Fraser Mill Road.
If anyone who's going to give testimony today, I'm going to swear you in. Raise your right hand. Do you swear that the documentary and auditory testimony that you give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
All right, just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes from the last meeting?
Yes.
Any corrections for those? They looked good to me. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from previous meeting?
I'm motion to approve the minutes from the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Thank you, Lynn. All those in favor of approving the minutes from the July 22, 2024 Board of Equalization meeting?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, those meetings are approved, or sorry, those minutes are approved. Any other old business before we move to the first hearing?
Not old business, but I do want to just point out, after having just read through this, that the board is aware that you're not able to make decisions on land use determinations, and this appears just to be an argument about land use determination.
Okay. And I guess, is this the first time that you've received this as well?
Yes.
The narrative. Okay. All right. So we're ready for the applicant to make your argument. We'll have 10 minutes to present an initial argument. There'll be a 7-minute rebuttal period from the assessor's office, and then you'll have 3 minutes to respond to the assessor's office. So 20 minutes in total, and we'll deliberate thereafter.
Okay. Is it time to start?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Yes, I acknowledge that a significant amount of the material I brought before you will come up in a court case later on. My purpose here today is to bring attention to the various metrics that you are available to you to assess a property. And one of them is in that you are substitute for a jury of your peers in this. It's not quite a true case before the civil court, but in fact, the reason that there's a number of you here is because they represent kind of a jury of sorts, and the juries of sorts do have constitutional right to nullify the very law itself, in addition to simply examining the evidence. So I'm asking you to take a bold position in assessing this property, to choose several tools available to you. One is to give the property a 0 value, give the property a $417 value, which is the metric used by value use, and force the county to actually litigate against me for this. The reason we're in this court here, or this forum here today, is because I wouldn't be here appealing this if we had a valid process for determining land use. But I trust that this is a recorded meeting, and I'm here to at least have a forum for discussing this outside of the civil court. And hopefully we can get somewhere without this, because it is a policy of the county to use lawfare against me, and I've won every case, because in the end, when we go to civil court, the matter is shown that there's absolutely no merit to the county's case. And this is just another example of that. So I'm going to read this into the record. I know it's long, but given I only have 10 minutes, I'm going to read this into the record because it's set in a way I need to say it. Today,
Mr.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, is it Kosalak?
yes,
Kosalak?
Yeah.
If you want to read this into the record, I'm not going to stop you. I would respectfully submit that may not be the most effective use of your
Okay.
time.
I accept that then. I didn't know how it was, and by the way, I trust I can get a copy of this recording, right? Okay. Well, the reason I'm urging you to take a very bold step is to assign this zero value is because the reason we're even here today is because we were forced to be in this court case. And we were originally told by the county's assessor office that this was in fact the forum to appeal a land use assessment. And then recently, we were then told that no, the county has made a determination that this is not the forum and it will have to go directly to civil court. The purpose of these types of hearings, as opposed to simply offering a civil court, is to save the taxpayers have a very low cost informal way to get possibly justice without going to that. And so we were denied that. It's unusual that the county has a bifurcated process as regards to taxes, that there would be one category where you discuss land valuations, and then you have another where it's a land use determination, have no right to appeal that in a forum like this. I doubt seriously that there were not other cases in land use that have come before the board, and the county has taken a position that, no, this is not the forum. I do recognize that that's what that you are charged with, simply hearing cases on valuation alone, okay? But notwithstanding, I wouldn't doubt that a FOIA request would find that other cases of land use were before this or before you. But you do have within your quiver the right to determine very different metrics for this property. Just going back to, this is not a one-time event, okay? We've been here in 2017 before when we appealed the tax assessment of 1.2 million. And we brought the staff out, they agreed and issued a letter from the staff on official stationery that our farm was now valued at 405, without 405,000, without regard to any land use valuation. And Peter Lynch then asked me on a personal basis as I was applying for the land use in the office, because I was very excited about the wild food gathering that we did as a part of our farm. And I was happy to tell anybody about that. Asked me on a personal basis if he could come out and see what's going on in our farm. And I said to him, if that's exclusively what you're there for, fine. And I had in my hand at the time a document from the county staff on letterhead saying that the farm was now unequivocally reassessed at 405 down from 1.2 million. And anyway, so in the process of that, I gave him an extraordinary tour and memorialized that with an email going over about 100 things that we were doing on the farm, showing him each path and grove that we went, including wild cherries, persimmons, maple syrup, dandelion, wild bark, things like that, where every square foot of our property was in production. And I was having run a company that was a food-based company, as shown here, which we had $5 million of venture capital, and one of our showcase products was wild foods. We sold to thousands of people around here. I knew how to market a product. And in any event, we were continuing with that on our farm. He sent a determination that, well, he removed our tax assessment, and sua sponte on his own went and overturned that and put it back at 900 some thousand. I brought that to the court here. You took a brokered position that was a 600,000 and we moved on. I then had to litigate to collect on that reassessment. We were able to get teasingly amounts of the refund back, going back a certain amount of time, but not the full suite of it available to him. And that matter's still in the courts. We filed the case, it sits in the courts, it's an unprosecuted, retaining our rights without regard to the statute of limitations. Sometimes that's the best way to manage your case until further notice. So he, in terms of prosecuting the farm use thing, when we applied that, he wrote to the Commissioner of Agriculture. After that tour, when we sampled maple syrup and other things along the way, he wrote to them and says, I did not see any agriculturally productive or commercially viable things. Now, I don't even have to make the argument that maple syrup is not a commodity in the United States. There's a $50 million heist of it in Canada. I brought included in your package, or is there was in the text and stuff. Shagbark Hickory Company. I made an offer to buy their company. They're in every market around here. They wouldn't sell me the company. There's huge value in this wild food stuff. And you can see the showcase on 2 pages of the Washington Post. We had persimmons on the front cover. I gathered those at my thing. I make value added products from those things. It's beyond dispute that we are doing that. Now, you might say, well, why is that before the valuation board? Because it is beyond dispute that maple syrup alone is a commercially viable product. Furthermore, we had we had 5 cows on the property when they came, all of which was set aside in letters to us saying we had no commercially viable product. And so when you're up against that, and I've been litigating against the zoning department successfully, et cetera, they will take a position that is so absurd that they even understand that it's absurd. It will not survive the first challenge in court. But the purpose of us being shifted into court is because when we were trying to recover perhaps a $3,000 deduction on our current tax rate and get it down to a land use, it's a value of $3,000. The cost of litigating these cases is extraordinary, especially if you're not steeped in law like I happen to be. When it comes to the cases, they often take $10,000 or $20,000. That the opportunity for recovery of that, because you can't sue the county, it's got sovereign immunity for recovery of your costs in doing that. You only get that benefit. So anyway, by forcing it into these forums where we don't have any opportunity for justice outside of extraordinary legal campaigns, yes, I have prevailed on each and every one of those legal campaigns. And the county has often admitted under oath that they have no viable premise for the underlying statutes, and it was overturned in court every time. This is one of those cases. And so if I had more than 10 minutes, I would easily paint to this county that it was willful and malicious to do this to us in our farm, to make us go to that court. And so I asked the county, this board here, to take in consideration that even though I have a small window to offer evidence of this, that the county's position in putting me in this, removing me an opportunity to simply get the tax upon application and get before the board, and now I'm forced into that position. Can you, and I say, I submit that you can you take the position to disallow the county for collecting taxes from us by giving it a 0 valuation, or alternately, a valuation that's predicated in the $405,000 assessment that the staff agreed was. And furthermore, when they came in here in 2017 to testify, the staff stood on that assessment against Peter Lynch and said, yes, that's a valid assessment, directly at 405. We have disinvested in our farm since getting into a war with the county in 2009 about this. And we have taken a $1.6 million farm and driven it down to a $405,000 by having no maintenance in the farm. And from 2017, when you awarded a $600,000 assessment on this, it has been pushed even further. The roofs are off, the barns are falling, and I'm sure that these pictures don't do justice to that. I haven't even seen their report on what this project is, but I can assure you that whereas the market may have moved up from 2007, because I am in real estate, I have hundreds of millions of dollars in real estate outside this area. I can assure you that if the market is moving up, this farm is moving down because we have willfully driven this farm down. We have put no maintenance into it. So yes, you can use all kinds of modeling, black box modeling, or et cetera, to assign it. But there's a reason why I prevailed in 2017 against an assessment of 900,000 or 1.2 million and got this board to agree that 600,000 was the assessment. And I can assure you that in court, we will have an assessment reduced. But I wanted to present to you an opportunity here today to take a very bold position that I have made a substantial enough case that the county is acting unethically towards us in our farm, that we have been made to jump through extraordinary hoops. When we were denied the land use valuation in 2017, Peter Lynch said, in addition to misinforming the Commission of Agriculture of what we were doing with visibly commercial projects, and noticeably so with this $50,000 a week in sales, that in fact, he's defined that all we would have to do is to, not all, but one of the proofs of income was to show on our tax returns and farm use a sufficient amount, which in this land use application, we tendered 5 years of those stated, tax farm income, things that are above the $1,000 limit. And so in spite of that complete suite of evidence,
that is unlike every other farm that's been given a land use here, or 99% of them. We have the prevailing case and will absolutely win that in court. But this board does have and reserve the right to nullify this, assign a value that's near zero, or one that was derivative of the 405,000 in 2017, or the current land use assessment approach, which puts it at 417,000. I haven't even seen what the evidence that Peter Murphy has put together to create whatever valuation is in front of you. We never got it. Furthermore, we were not guided to the process by which we would appeal this successfully, or what the path was, until just recently. So I'm unprepared to go in that direction right now. But that's, I don't know if I'm at the 10 minutes, but that's the core of
We're at
it.
11 minutes.
Okay, I'll stop.
Perfect, thank you. All right, Mr. Lynch, would the assessor's office like to make it 7 minutes?
So I don't think we need 7 minutes. Do you actually want me to speak to any land use related issues?
I think for the purposes of the hearing, it would be important for the assessor's office to make clear whether it thinks that the board has the authority to decide those issues. And if not, why not? And then I think, what you've submitted sort of has to do with the fair market value of the property. So that's what I understood you guys were asking us to decide.
That is correct. So it was our understanding, and it was the information that was provided in the training for the new board members that this board does not have the authority to determine qualification, and that was upheld by the county attorney's office. So there's so much in here that is misdirection and somewhat nonsense that the applicant has put before you. Certainly has provided some letters that are real letters, but he's mischaracterizing them greatly. And we can go on for hours about how inappropriate that is. But really, when it comes to market value, though, he is absolutely right. He's taken a $1.6 million, which is what he's paid for this property, and run it into the ground. What was a beautiful 1700s home that had been renovated and back in 1975, and it is in horrible shape now, and we represent that shape, that condition of the property in our valuation. There's the 1700s home, and there are 2 other homes on the property, which I believe, at least the last time I was out there, he leased them to other people. And we have those, all of the improvements in less than average condition to show their wear and tear and lack of upkeep. The property, the land value, the Board of Equalization in 2017 decided that a view adjustment for being on the river there, which it's a beautiful, and I'll show this on the screen. It's a beautiful property, and the river wraps around it. So the board decided at that point that a view adjustment was not appropriate. I think actually the reason was that it was not equally applied to properties along the river at that time. And we decided to take those view adjustments off from then on. And that never changed. So that has been, the view adjustment was taken off in 2017 and is never put back on. I'm not quite sure where the $417,000 value comes from, because looking at the history, the value went as low as $638,600 since I've been here. That's the lowest value. That's since 2015. 417. The 2017. The land value is 335, 334.5. Was that your question?
I saw 4 something, but that's what I was asking. Maybe that was the land value.
No, I don't see a 417 anywhere, even just for the land, but I mean, the land is obviously lower, but. With the three houses, the lowest total, and I'm assuming what he's asking here, 417 or 0. Asking, he thinks the property is worth 0 for tax purposes. Which is patently absurd, but yeah, 682 was the lowest, so I'm not sure where 417 is even coming from. And I do want to, straighten out a couple of things. I had no personal need to look at the property. It was an official need to figure out what was actually happening on the property. So I just want to, not that it really matters in this case, but I didn't go out to see his property just because I had personally decided to do so. But there were also no cows on the property when I visited it. I'm not sure if there have been cows on it at all, but I only know that when I visited, there were no cows. So there was definitely a variety of dispersed uses on the property, but not cows. So I don't know if there's anything else. Jim visited the property.
Yeah, one quick note, this is from Eric Keene,
Right.
that the day we saw the property, Mr. Kostelak preferred that we not do any interior inspections of the improvements. We only expected everything from the exterior. But in Eric's notes, as the tour of the property, he wrote, we counted 4 cows on the property, 1 dead sheep, 1 living sheep, and no chickens, as far as animals. And that was on April the 8th, we did the inspection of 2020.
But there were no cows on in 2017 when I visited the property.
All right. Thank you. Any questions for the assessor?
What's the assessment in 2017? Building and then land.
The assessment in 2017, the land was 334,500. I've got to add 2 things together with the improvements.
You can do building and outlets.
Okay, then 291,400 for the buildings, and 12,700 for the outbuildings.
What was the outbuildings? I didn't hear that.
12,700. Okay, that was in 2017, right? That's what you were asking for?
Yes.
What's the condition of the land?
The condition of the land, it's sloping, rolling, river frontage, some views, but nothing I would consider really significant to adjust for. And the improvements are close to the road, and then there's a lot of vacant land towards the rear, as you can see. Where's the road there, Pete?
The road is up here.
So most of the improvements are close to the road, and everything else is just vacant. And then along the top there is the road.
One of the things I remember, there was some erosion along the river, along this corner where the river comes around. But otherwise, there's floodplain in that southern portion of the property. But otherwise, it was the land is in, normal condition.
Well, the applicant's rebuttal period now.
Yes, I have 3 minutes. It's too short. I'll say this. I'm a professional developer of historic properties. I'm fully capable of renovating this to the value that it could ever achieve. I've done that 607 Giles Street, 1830s plantation, and 377, 337 Riva Lane up in Ruckersville. All these are multi-million-dollar properties. I know how to do it. But one of the things you cannot do is put an overvaluation on a property over $1 million close to the road. It is flawed structurally. That's why no matter how this property goes forward, you cannot renovate that building with the cost it takes to renovate that building
and put it back on the market and expect not to lose millions of dollars. I'll point out a key example on the opposite bank of us is Noah Bradley's property, which is a 9,000 square foot, beautifully done renovation, 9,000 square feet at a cost of $300,000 a square foot. He was into it for 2.5 million after buying the land. It was sold in an open forum, not at auction, by the bank who foreclosed over it and had a very long protracted period to offer it to the public. That sold for 1.1 million with a $9,000 stunning improvement on it. So what would you affirm the land basis was on that property? Secondarily, not a few years ago, the 30-acre parcel on the riverfront at the bend just to upstream of us went for sale. 30 acres went for $250,000. So you may consider that waterfront property in Albemarle County has a value. It does not. It is a talking point, but that is not. When it comes to developable value, the front property is the actual liability. If one puts a single dollar in this property, you would have to build something that was hidden from view, away from it, because you will not get above builder's grade value for anything that close to the highway. When people are paying $1 million and above, they want privacy. They do not move to be a public building. So in fact, from a real estate standpoint, the entire front of the property is the liability. Every building probably needs to be torn down because you'll never get the money back for propping those buildings up. And so it's strategic that now the question is, how do you deal with that? There are ways to deal with that, but you have to come at this property with $4 or $5 million. This is not where you're going to get a $6 million buyer. It's not going to happen here. In any event, not with this parcel. By the way, I think to mischaracterize it, approximately 30 to 40% of this property is in the floodplain. And I would assert that there's also a property in Crozet that is unsaleable today at any value because it was formerly the site of a contamination event. We all know about it. It was this big event that happened. It's a Superfund site. There are properties that have negative value. I've had many environmentally impacted properties that have a negative value. When you step into the ownership chain, you are going to assume a tremendous amount of liability for being in the ownership chain. What I'm proposing to you is something a little bit unusual for you to deal with, that this particular property has is under attack by the county. I don't have the form to go into it here, but I'm just telling you, I have an unusual amount of friction in moving this property forward in any direction. The last thing I'm going to do is invest several $1 million on a renovation project in Albemarle County. I've divested from this project and I've divested from many other strategic properties in Keswick and everywhere else because I do not want to wager into the litigation about zoning or any discretionary judgments that the county would have. It is not the forum to do it, is an unfair place. So I say the comp to this particular property, and not for general ownership, but for our ownership, is the Crozet property that is an environmentally impacted property with zero value. But you can also then jump across the river and infer the land value or $1.1 million sale with a 9,000 square foot boutique project going for 1.1 million. Those would be two easy approaches to what this property is worth.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any questions from the board for the applicant? Can't see Mr. Beer.
Sorry.
I think we could hear him probably if he had any.
But before I ask the questions, I have we can only determine valuation, right?
As opposed to the land use thing, we can't talk about that.
Well, we talked about it because we don't have the authority to do
Right.
anything about it. Is that accurate? That was.
So my understanding is that a land use, it's procedurally distinct and that when it occurs, it's a percentage-based reduction against market value. And I think it's pretty clear to me, at least, that we only have authority to set pricing according to market value. Can't set it higher than we think market value is. We can't set it lower. And if it was set lower and then the land use based reduction was applied, it would be too low. So that's the way I understand it.
You would have, if the property was being assessed at land use rates, you would be able to determine if those land use rates, if the land use values were appropriate or not.
once one is in place.
Yes. However, the state recommends if the SLIAC values are being used, that you don't, because everybody's got exactly the same rates for the same soil types. So that's the full recommendation from the State Department of Taxation.
So could I just ask this? I mean, are you selling any of the stuff that you have here
Absolutely,
for $100 or $1,115?
absolutely.
That exact number 5 years in
Yes,
a row?
because I sell it in a single contract to make matters simpler for tax purposes. Yes, and that's why it's been the same. They attack me on why does that number thing? That's immaterial to how you set up contracts. It frees us from the burden of managing what a thing is worth in seasons where we don't harvest anything. For example, this year we had no wild cherries or insignificant. But like many crops, you have to have a continuous attention to them, even in years where they don't have any back. And it may be true for morels or persimmons or cetera, the irregular crops. So you have a contract for a continuous amount of money over years.
Well, I don't think it's immaterial because they have to assess whether you're meeting the half the county average per acre crop yield.
We have established the average because no one else is harvesting persimmons or wild cherries. We are the average. I can assure you, no one is even harvesting and selling maple syrup. So in every category where we would assert that, I can assure you, who's selling wild grape leaves besides me in this county?
Did you own the 4 cows?
With that? Yeah,
Did you own-
absolutely.
You-
Yeah.
Did you sell them?
Yes, I sold them into the same trust that I did everything else, yes, for a flat rate of 1,115 without regard.
What happened to them?
What happened to them? There's
Are they still there or?
no, only part of the cows are on the farm right now. We have some parts on the cow, but they're out into the market. They're out into the market. We have, I mean, honestly.
They got butchered is what.
Yeah, absolutely. Went butchered up in Orange County at a custom butchery. And we've also had them butchered over in Joel Salatin's place over to get the USDA stamp. Depends on what the relationship is. But we don't have to have a fixed price on everything. We could sell the whole lot for just enough to qualify, which is one, because the actual value of what we do is in the actual recipes created from these things. I have bought and sold companies, Bobby's Hummus, I paid $220,000 for their recipe, okay? I've sent in this email thing, the hickory bark syrup thing, that was sold for, $100,000. Pretzel chips, Lance was unable to reproduce that company's recipe. They sold for $230 million to get that recipe. So it's the intellectual property that's worth a lot.
Are you disputing the value of the assessment on the buildings?
What, it's
Or only-
12,000?
Or only the land?
Well, I think I'm valuing that the buildings are negative, okay? All the buildings are a tear down, okay? So you actually, if you're buying a property like this and they're a tear down, you actually have to consider the cost of destroying those things before you get to a clear land. So I would say they're a negative value. And then the land itself has a cap of few $100,000 because of the comps around it. There is no comps. The best comps around it are the ones right across the river. Well, what is the land basis on $1.1 million property with a 9,000 square foot boutique, $300,000 square foot creation? That's easy to get to.
Is that property he's talking about, is that listed on?
Not that I'm aware.
I'm aware.
As a comp.
Is it this new house? I'm sorry, directly across the river on Vance Mills, right?
No. No, I don't know what property we're actually talking.
It's something Advanced Mills Road. It's literally the entire opposite, right there. You got it right there. That one right there. And furthermore, the one upstream on the upper side of the dam, a few years back, sold for $270,000 for 30 waterfront acres. 30 waterfront acres. If they're not on there, that's a glaring omission.
I believe the sales are from 2023.
Okay.
That sale is 2023, but the land above it was enough years back that you would have encompassed that into a review of waterfront sales. Additionally, the bed and breakfast next to us, I didn't even consider that, went for $1.3 million with another 7,000 square feet, multiple buildings on it that were $300 a square foot to create. What would you back into a land basis on that?
I mean, whatever that is. But those buildings cost every bit of the value of those sales. And in Noah's case, significantly more than the sale value. That tells you the strength of the market for waterfront values. It's not where it's at. Noah's was tragically flawed, and his property was too close, his building was too close to the road. No one would pay that for it.
So it's really easy to throw out a bunch of this nonsense.
Nonsense.
But this is the property directly across the street, so I'll show you on the map. This is the property you're talking about, right?
Yep.
The 9,000 square feet.
9,000 square foot house.
The
And,
light green is floodplain, right?
and I think you said $300,000 per square.
That's his
foot
construction
renovation, but
cost.
You meant $300.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry.
Okay.
$300 square foot construction cost. Yeah.
Okay.
And look at the floodplain. Yeah.
Yeah, the good floodplain, I'm not denying the floodplain, but this house has 4,782 square feet. We are assessing it at 1,195,600, and it's sold for 1,104,000. So I'm not quite sure why this is showing something.
It has two floors.
Negative.
They've discounted the lower floor in that assessment. I guarantee you that's a fully
The
renovated.
basement
It's
still
fully
doesn't add
open.
up to 9,000 square feet, but this is just, one of, you can look at the other ones if the board wants to, but I think these are exaggerations of a loose understanding of properties in the market.
Do you have any information on what the average price? What the average assessment in this market has gone up since 2017? There any data on there?
Yes, there is. But I have to figure it. I know the last 3 years we had 4%, 8%, 13.5%. So
For in 23 to 24,
just back
the
to
spike was 20 to 21.
correct. And the values have been going up since 2017, not as much as they have the last 3 years, but it was 2 to 3, 4%.
Let's not forget the interest rates that we are at presently and when the interest rates were in that period.
That would apply more directly to commercial properties, but frankly, I'm in this business too.
Do you live?
Residential in this
Do
world.
you
is
live here?
different.
Yeah, other than that property.
I know this property just from my real estate experience and all that I can remember back when you bought it. And I think initially it came on the market for almost over $3 million.
Well, it didn't sell for anything.
No, it didn't, but it was a charming property. No matter how close to the road you say it is, it was still,
No,
and-
it was a charming property.
Absolutely.
I did that, yeah.
and I just don't see why you did this is beyond me, but that's not here nor there, but I just couldn't support anything.
Well, I spent $5 million in 2009 and an approved process to have a farm-based business there. And that after litigating with the county on this matter, which was approved for that property, then we took a loss on that, moved out and bought property in Greene County and continued to visit there, raised another $60 million on that project. Last thing we were concerned about is the future of this property. And the county continued to come out and trespass on the property to litigate over 1 inch of standing water or things like that. All those cases were thrown out. Illegally,
You said they trespassed on the property.
because they were ordered off the property and the county's handbook says that they cannot come back without a court order, which they did. They snuck beyond the curtilage onto the property and took photographs, came out under FOIA. They did that, okay? That, they were unable to tender that into evidence because they did that. Now I sent the county a list of all the property I owned and said, if you want on this property, because they had a habit of doing this, that you cannot come without a court order, and they have continued to do that. So that's part of a RICO case against the county right now, because it is a policy to do that, to gain evidence. And I talked to and recorded Amelia McCauley saying that. She says, we look at the Constitution as they suggest. She said that on tape.
Okay. Are there any further questions or? Mr. Mitchell, you said you might have a few. Have those been asked?
I don't.
Mr. Beard, do you have anything further before we proceed to deliberations?
No questions from me. Thank you.
Okay, Thank you for the applicant's presentation and these materials, which will become part of the record in the case along with the assessor's office's submission. So in my mind, it would make sense to take up the issue first of what is the scope of what we're deciding here, and then we can proceed to the substantive piece of whatever we're doing. So I think everyone probably knows my position, but my position would be that we are not allowed to accept the invitation that the applicant has extended to sort of relitigate, well, to litigate for the first time or to decide the resolution of a land use application that was denied. I want to say also that it seemed like the purpose of this has flipped and flopped a couple times on the way here. And I understood that it was decided that that was not going to be the topic of this hearing and that we were going to be assessing it on the basis of the market value as compared to other properties surrounding. So to be asked to basically do the thing that would, you know, it was decided and that we would not do ahead of time today, I don't think I can do that in light of the training that we've had and my understanding of the authority of this board that's conveyed by the county attorney during that training and the handbook that was provided.
When it comes to the land value, frankly, I think it's a little low. I think you could make an argument about the building being possibly a little high because of the deterioration of it, but we haven't been inside. I don't know that you can answer that fully. It really has a lot to do with that. It's got a metal roof on it. We'd have to see if the real devaluation of the building is it rotting from the, is it leaking? Is it rotting from the inside out? And but we can't get in there to see it. We want to see it, so I can't do anything about that. But I mean, the land value seems low to me already. I did some. You had a 5% a year starting in 2017. That's, which is not an unreasonable number in this community. Maybe conservative. You're pushing up against 500,000. So I don't see anything I want to change specific to land value, which is what it's the only thing we can look at. The land value, I mean, the value, not the land use. You'll have to fight that battle elsewhere.
I'll make the motion, we affirm the county's tax assessment of Mr. Lane Williams on application number 70.
Thank you, Len. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Norford. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, the assessor
Assessment, total value of $860,200.
Just to be clear, Mr. Beard's vote came in a little late. Mr. Beard, will you please state whether you voted aye or nay on that one?
Aye, thank you.
Thank you. So that concludes the hearing on application number 75 for 1785 Praise Mill Road, and we will send a letter to the applicants regarding that. Thank you for your presentation. Any other new business for us to take up today? You said you might have some things.
So just the Hyatt Place, I sent you an email, you all an email, and because the only day left to resolve that is the 8th, before the statutory deadline of September 1st.
Did it get back to you with any dates or anything?
No, but I'm sorry, they did. And I believe they were the last 2 days of August, which you do not have hearings set for.
They came back and said that they could do it then.
Correct,
not on the 8th.
correct.
And the 8th again is
It's the last
advertised.
advertised date in which you are all available.
And we had some dates after that. It was in September, but those were what?
Those are supplemental assessments and they're
The things that were on June 31st or something.
yeah, anything that was assessed like new construction after January 1st. Effective date. But anything that isn't a January 1st effective date has to be determined by September.
And remind me, we had to advertise and we looked at our calendars and came up with those dates. And August 8th is the last one of those dates.
August 12th is the last date we advertise, but you're not all available.
So what happens then?
Who's not available?
Mr. Mayor,
8th.
the 12th.
If we can't agree on a date, what happens?
You have to make a determination whether they are available or not. It's the board has to make a determination.
So right now it's the
Correct. And yeah, it would be helpful if it was just, kind of determined at this point that this is the day that you have to that you're going to meet and make a decision. Because that's the only option left to you.
Could you refresh my memory on where we are on that particular thing? Did we vote on anything on that?
The only votes you made were about continuing in several different meetings to continue to a later date. And then you voted to restrict the information that could be provided by the applicant to only relate to the parking question. And then there was a third vote
About the remote.
about not allowing remote, which the rules of procedure actually don't allow remote participation by an applicant at all. It's not to be decided in a meeting or anything like that. It's actually the wording when I went back to read it was that it was just, you had to be in person. And the only flexibility was for board members and they were limited to the amount of times it could happen. And it had to be, it's based on state law that allows that to happen.
So the $95,000 increase, where does that stand? Was that ever made in a motion?
So this is the last thing I sent to you, I believe. Okay, so that was where I provided kind of where we ended up with all the information that has been provided. So Mr. Beard asked me in the last meeting in regard to some of the information they provided about what's the select service and some of the emails that were provided by the applicant from some professionals in the industry. Correct. Thank you. And so as we kind of redetermined it, took a look at everything involved in the description of this property, which honestly, I'm sorry, I apologize that had not been done before. Not that the select service, because based on both Deb Collier and my knowledge, the property had a restaurant. And it does have a restaurant, but it's the question of how extensive that restaurant is that I think is the point of this conversation, point of, the valuation here. But looking at that,
It's not just the restaurant. Select service versus full service also includes meeting rooms.
Correct.
Which they have. I mean, they have. I don't think that your initial determination is wrong, frankly.
I don't think it was wrong either. I don't think it's an error, and I'm not presenting it as an error. However, considering professionals in the industry and how they were graded. So
Could I stop you just to be cautious?
yeah. Okay. So yeah, I don't want to do this.
Shouldn't get into it too deeply, but so they'll have an opportunity to participate. And
Right.
So going back to that. Their opportunity to participate.
But so we're all
We-
here
we
now,
had-
we might as well make a decision now.
Well, no, we have.
No, I mean,
That's not what I'm
no,
saying.
about the date.
I just
mean,
want to make,
about the
yeah,
date.
right. I just want to make a point. They knew about the initial hearing date, how much in advance?
I would have to look it up at least a month.
Or more? Because they
Or more,
advertised.
more than a
We had
month.
to put the advertising together.
Yeah, we put the advertisement out immediately after your
So I'm just,
organizational meeting, and we actually set up the hearings before we advertised in some
right,
cases.
so well in advance.
Correct.
Enough time to get your ducks in a row and get your representatives here.
That is correct.
They're getting the same, I mean, they've asked. We're now giving them another opportunity to get their ducks in a row and get their representatives. And I think the 8th is a reasonable date. And if they can't, we'll just make a decision, in my opinion. That's what I think we should do.
Yeah, I think we just run out of time to really do more than say when we're available and offer that opportunity to the applicant, and hopefully it will be accepted or available, they've been accepted. But if not, we really don't have another option, it would appear to me.
So do we need a motion to set the date or
What day do we say we were available?
August 8th,
August 8th, that's good with me. I can-
Correct.
or just direct you?
I would have a vote. Do you want to consider, if they are not available, that they provide documents in lieu of being here?
Sure, within what we said we would talk about, parking and, yeah.
Okay, then I would, if that's the way you want to proceed, then I would make a motion that includes all of that, just to make it clear.
So I would like to move that we reschedule the Hyatt Place application submitted. The applicant was Mr. McFarland to August 8th. And invite the applicant to attend, to submit anything that he or would like us to consider. In the context of an email that the issue is limited to these issues, or the further submissions are limited to these issues, which are parking and sorry, what is it? The other piece.
The other was the management fee.
Yeah, that's right, correct.
So those issues and but that even if the applicant can attend, we need to deliberate and finalize the decision on that date. There's a second for that lengthy speaking motion.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Okay, all those in favor?
I,
Aye.
Aye.
Right, all opposed? Okay,
I
We have
would
a
just like
time.
to say for the record, I was not trying to get into a discussion about this matter. I was just, I had a couple of questions for clarity purposes.
of course.
Yeah, what about the time on that? You gonna set a time?
Yes, we can set it. What is that day? Do we have this restricted, like a?
August 8th is a Thursday, and we have rooms scheduled for between 8 and 2.
So between 8 and 2,
Nine.
any time in there, 9 would be fine.
I'll give them time to drive, whatever. But of course, they have a hotel, I assume they can spend the night.
Do you want me to offer them any time between 8 and 1?
So I have a hearing at 9. I could get someone else to cover it if I needed to, but it would be easier for me to do it later that day. At 11 or at 1:30 or.
I'm available,
Yeah, me too.
I just prefer mornings, but that's.
If that's all we can decide on, I'll make it work.
That's the
Only one.
time.
If they have one, that would be. cool.
Yeah,
We can find another room.
okay, yeah, 1 o'clock would be great.
Okay, 1 o'clock.
Perfect.
Who seconded that?
That was-
Mr. Megan.
Yes.
discuss. That's the only thing that we have, Mr. Mayor,
Okay,
unless you guys.
no,
Motion adjourned.
Second.
that's it.
We need to vote on that.
To end the meeting, yes. Thank you for the motion. Thank you for seconding it, Mr. Norford. And all those in favor of adjourning the July 29th, 2024 meeting, Board of Equalization. Aye. Okay,
Aye.
all opposed? All right, unanimously approved, and we'll adjourn at 9:59 a.m.
Thank you for doing the Zoom, everybody.
Yeah,